The Tortola Pier Park in the British Virgin Islands is officially a toddler, having celebrated its first anniversary on February 16, 2017. Now, joining me today on The Big Story, that's in addition to Kathy Richards, is Ken Silva from the BVI Beacon to take a look back at this major development project for the territory, which has also had a controversial history. Now, this week, in light of its first birthday, the Pier Park has been lauded by government officials, including officials from the Tortola Pier Park Limited, Premier Dr. D. Orlando Smith, and the Minister with Responsibility, Mark Vanterpool. Now, what they're telling us is that the Pier Park initially started out with some 368,000 visitors, and that has nearly doubled, pulling in now close to 700,000 cruise passengers, and that's expected to get up to 1 million in another 3 years or so. Let's start by looking at the value that this Pier Park has added to the BVI economy so far. And before I get to your comments, let's hear what the Premier and the Minister had to say earlier this week.
I think we made the right decision to expand the cruise pier and to build a pier park. It is something that, as far as I can determine, is proven to be successful. Many new businesses have started in the pier park that did not exist before. And there are many opportunities arisen for people to start businesses and hence contribute to the overall economy of the BVI.
Well, we've been happy to see the many ships that have been coming. We are up with our numbers. I think this year is going to exceed 700,000 in terms of passengers. We're looking to get to the million mark in the next 3 years and sort of keep it there for a little bit. But we're happy that today, on just 2 days before anniversary for the Pier Park side, remember the dock was opened in April of 2015. A year later, from last year, February, we are seeing the anniversary of the landside development, which is beautiful.
The government is quite pleased with the Pier Park and how its operations has been going. What can you guys say, being on the ground, in terms of feedback from the owners of the shops there and even persons here in the BVI?
Yeah, well, what the glory side of the story is indeed a fact, and it's evident for me and many other persons here in Tortola. When you wake up in the morning and you look through your window, you see ships in the dock. When you get out into the traffic, you have to jostle the many taxi buses laden with cruise passengers. You walk through the Pier Park, you walk through some other business entities, and they are the mixture, that beautiful blend of people shopping. So yes, there is that glory side, and people do compliment that aspect of it as well.
Okay.
Sure. And there's been a lot of hoopla this week about the 1-year anniversary of Tortola Pier Park. In order to understand, though, exactly what we're celebrating, it's kind of important to know the history of the Pier Park, why it was built in the first place. So government entered into agreements with Norwegian and Disney in early 2014. The government said, hey, we're going to build this Pier Park and you guys are going to bring about 425,000 passengers each year and pay a $15 head tax on each passenger, which obviously helps with government revenue. There was a number of delays in the project that allowed Norwegian to pay only $7 throughout 2015 and early 2016. It was February 16th of last year when Norwegian finally started paying the $15, and that's the real anniversary that we're celebrating.
And of course, in discussing the praises that comes along with an anniversary celebration, we also have to take a look back at the controversies, especially if some of those controversies have carried over into, this new year. Now, the Pier Park was expanded following its initial development in 1994 by the previous then VIP administration. Can give us a little bit of the history there, especially as it pertains to deja vu.
Okay, well, there's a whole lot of history that we can't cover in the 10 minutes that we have, but I will say, in terms of this latest development, the biggest controversy, I think, is the cost overruns. Government originally said it was going to cost $50 to $60 million. We know now that it's at least 85 million, probably a lot more than that. And the biggest controversy is that government continued to tell the public this $50 to $60 million cost when in fact they knew throughout the latter half of 2014 all the way through 2015, and it wasn't until January 8th or around that time when Minister Vanderpool finally got up in the House and said, actually, it costs a lot more. So, through the elections, through a whole lot of time, they kind of kept it from the public.
And in addition to the controversy surrounding cost overruns, whether or not audits need to be done, inquiries need to be enacted, concerns continue about whether the business that's thriving at the Pier Park is flowing into other businesses outside the environs of the Pier Park. The Premier and Minister Vanderpool responded to some of those concerns this week. Let's hear that.
I think that there is enough business for everyone, particularly since the negotiations which we had before the cruise pier was built allowed for an increased number of visits by cruise ships, a significantly increased number of visits, which means that there should be enough visits for everyone.
Of course, I'm concerned to make sure that our vendors on the park and at Craft Alive can benefit from the visits, as well as the taxis and all other destinations outside of the Pier Park. So we're very happy about it. It's going well. It's a successful investment. We are very pleased that we have made it. And nothing, as I tell everybody, nothing happens overnight. And then the success of it in terms of financial doesn't happen in the same year. So over the next 5-10 years, we expect to see a lot of benefits to the territory. And by which time we hope we'd have finished paying our bills or debt, and that the people of the territory can really benefit from this in the long run.
So Kathy, Ken, the Premier and the Minister there, you heard responding directly to some of those concerns. The Premier says, there's enough business to go around for everyone. The Minister did concede, though, that some of those concerns, especially as it relates to visitors getting to some of those other businesses outside of the Pier Park, something needs to be done to facilitate that connection. Kathy, you actually put that question to the Premier.
Yes, I did, because I've been interacting so much with many vendors across the territory, here on Tortola particularly, especially those in Craft Alive. They seems to have some of the biggest issues with how business goes. What they are looking for, what they have been suggesting for quite some time, is if there can be a way in which the management of the cruise pier can arrange to have the taxi drivers bring the passengers to the park out there, so they can spend some time and come and do some shopping in at Craft Alive, because they said the businesses, despite you might have 3 ships in at one time, they seldom get any sale on those given days. Then we have the taxi drivers themselves with some concerns. They are claiming that there needs to be some organization, or better organization, I dare say, to how they take turns in loading to get passengers. There have been complaints that there are some people who are in government jobs who are not officially taxi drivers going out there and holding spaces for others. We hear all these things. And then we have the entertainers who have also been complaining, saying that they feel that some persons are disenfranchised in terms of who gets how much time to play on the Pier Park. And that's just a little bit of it.
Ken, in addition to challenges, there are other phases of this Pier Park that are still to be rolled out, aren't there?
Sure, yeah. The biggest thing that remains to be done is the giant plot of land right next to the initial terminal building on the pier. It's bare land, there's some pilings there. That was supposed to be an international chain restaurant, something like Margaritaville, the minister originally planned. About $500,000 has been spent on the pilings and the foundational work, but no work has occurred there for over a year now, because apparently the minister said that the building was going to cost way more than it was originally estimated. It was supposed to cost $2.5 million. He didn't say how much more it would cost to build that building, but it doesn't look like work's going to be done there anytime soon, which is obviously an issue.
And in addition to that, in a release that the minister sent out, he said that the next phase should also involve an extension of the boardwalk from the Pier Park to the Queen Elizabeth Park just down the road. So we look forward to those, additions, as well as seeing there are some stores that are still unoccupied. The Pier Park says it's about 90%, Ken?
Yeah, and there's all but 4 of the kiosks are occupied, which is a good thing because this time last year I think there was only 1 or 2 kiosks open. There's a couple spaces open, but I think they're doing pretty well. I think the biggest focus should be getting on that last building to be finished because they need to complete the Pier Park in order to fulfill their agreement with the cruise lines. Until they don't have the cruise pier completely finished, according to the contracts that I've read, the cruise piers or the cruise lines have a right to pull out of their agreement to bring the 425,000 passengers each year and pay the $15 head tax on those. They have a right to pull out of that until everything's finished.
And right there, we have to leave it for the big story this week. Thanks again for coming, Kathy. And of course, Ken, you can drop by anytime here on the big story to help us explore the issues that are of national interest to residents here in the BVI. Until next week on the big story right here on JTV Channel 55, I'm Peter Gay Coombs saying bye-bye.